Hi, this is Roger, thanks for dropping by. I'm going to tackle this beastie now. In case you're seeing this video in isolation, this plant appears to be doing incredibly well. These are the older canes, last year's growths. This shed load up here is this year's growth, which is still actively growing. It's still at it. And the reason I need to do something with this plant is here at the base of the plant. Quite a few of these new roots have lost their growing tips, and I fear, I can't prove it one way or the other, that there's some munchers in behind the base here, down in the crevices of the bark. The little snails are getting at them. And the only reason I think that is the roots that are away from the moss are doing okay, and anything that gets near the base of the plant just isn't. And I've got to stop that process, because the roots that are coming out now are for next year, yeah, because it starts growing its roots later in the season. Well, as you can see, like now, it's well into the season. This one seems to throw out its new growth in the spring, but there's a delay in the new roots following on. So the roots that have had their ends chewed, I'm hoping will branch, but the first thing to do is get it off its mount. Good job these things are sturdy. So this was wired on, yeah, simply because of its weight and its size. And you know, I often use fishing line for smaller plants because you can hardly see it and they look nice. But you know, there's a limit to how much the fishing line can hold without starting to cut into parts of the plant because of the weight pulling against it. So I use that for smaller, lighter plants, and the heavier stuff gets the wire. I don't know how easy this is going to be to come off. We'll find out in a minute. But I might have to do some more trimming with the wire to get it to pull through. Obviously, as I'm doing this, I don't want any damage to actually occur. I do want this to be a gentle process as such. So I've just got to look at where the wire starts and give it a good clean run. This moss has been on here quite a long time, and that may well be part of the problem. It's just the moss is breaking down. It doesn't last forever, and certainly in the growing season for a dendrobium like this that puts on such a massive amount of growth, obviously it needs a lot of water and feed to enable it to do that and mature those canes. So it gets fed and watered well, which is my way with these type of dendrobiums, and in doing so the moss stays wet a lot longer than it might do. Now I'm hoping that is just going to lift off. It's not as bad as I was expecting. Now a lot of this video is going to be off camera. This is what I'm worried about, is there are so many hidey holes for those tiny little snails to get in. Lovely cosy little home on this mount for those sort of critters. They can get in there during the daytime and hide away. It's nice and moist and, you know, and dark and absolutely perfect. You know, you could use that to culture those little snails and then have great pleasure in killing the little tykes. Anyway, that needs a good sterilisation process if I'm going to use it again. And if I use it again, what am I encouraging? It's one of those pieces of cork bark that looks gorgeous for a mount. Look at all these places for the roots to get. But perhaps a smoother piece, bearing in mind what I think's wrong, might be a better idea. Less places for critters to hide. Yeah? So that's to be thought about. That's not a now thing, that's for in a minute. Right. I just want to look round the back of this plant and see what's going on. Oh, see, this even goes back to the days when I used to put the coconut fibre stuff in with the moss. So I think part of the inherent problem is that this moss has just been there too long. It's just falling apart. It's seen better days, yeah? So I'll get this under the tap. Give it a good clean out, get as much of the old stuff out of the way as I can, and certainly get that coconut fibre out of the way. See, there are some new roots in here. There is not only a new root, it's got a green tip. So it hasn't been munched. So there may be more good roots on this plant than perhaps I first thought. So I shall go away and give that a good clean. And then at that point I can have a think about what I'm going to remount it on. But there's an inherent problem. When I remount this, my new style of mounting Dendrobiums, because this is what happens with the moss, and if you put the moss on the mount and then put the plant on top of it, at some point it's probably going to have to come off again. And that's not what mounting is all about. Mounting is all about putting a plant in its permanent home. It'll attach itself to its mount, make itself happy. Your job is to keep it hydrated and fed. So the moss needs to go on the outside. That's new for me, it's new thinking. Didn't think like that in the past, but on reflection, I've had to take a few plants off their mounts this year because that moss had gone really manky behind the plant. Well, if there isn't any behind the plant, and it starts to go manky, it's on the front of the plant, how easy is that going to be to sort out? You've just literally got to tease and wash off that old moss from the front of the plant, and if necessary replace it. Yeah? Well, the thing I can't do at the moment is give this plant any moss because I haven't got any. But today's Thursday, tomorrow's the Orchid Society meeting where my moss should turn up. So in the meantime, this plant can just be bare rooted. It won't hurt it. It's only going to be a few days and then it can have some new moss round, you know, where the growing root tips are, keep it hydrated better because it's in such a high rate of growth at the moment. I don't really want this thing drying out for anything but the minimum amount of time, just so that it has its sort of wet dry cycle. But I don't want it staying dry, so we'll see how we go. But first job is to clean up this, decide what it's going to get mounted on, and then get back at that point. I'll be back. Okay, let's have a go at this then. Things to think about. This is an incredibly heavy, top heavy plant. Yeah, it's going to need to be very secure. Yeah, wobbly plants on mounts just don't seem to grow as good as ones that are nice and firm. Don't know why, it just seems to be so. And I've just had a bit of a giggle because while this was doing its sterilisation thing, now for me to clean off a mount, first thing I do is give it a spray with hydrogen peroxide. Far more important when it's a used mount. The idea of that is not necessarily to get at the critters, I'll get at them in a minute, but it's to make sure things like spores and algae are dead, and I use a little toothbrush and give it a good scrub. But my sterilisation process is I pour boiling water on it. You know, anything that thinks it can live through that, well maybe, but I do it again. So it gets two lots, especially when it's a used mount, and there was a possibility of critters down in those crevices, so they've boiled in their shells with any luck, and if they'd stayed away from my plants they could have lived a happy and long life. Right, so this plant needs to be very secure. It does have a front and a back. Yeah, you have a look at the front, you see all the nice shiny leaves. If you have a look at the back, you see the backs of all those leaves. That's because of where it's been kept, and it grows towards the light to a degree. Now I do get light from above, you know, which allows things to move upwards and not grow sideways, but it's had its back to the darkest area, and that's just the place it's been kept. And quite honestly, I want the plant to stay round one side of the mount. I don't want it to try and get round the other side, so there's some logic there. But because it's such a heavy plant, it's going to need a fair bit of strapping, so I'm going to use wire. And first thing for me to consider is where it's going to sit on the mount. Yeah? Two things to consider. If it goes there, how tall is it? If it sits there, how tall is it? So where do you think it's going to go? It's going down the bottom of the mount. And there's an extra reason in the case of this plant. If I need to, I can just put a strap loosely around some of the canes near the top of the mount to just hold them in place while it gets a grip, so to speak. Just on closer inspection, a lot of these older roots, they've been chewed, I'm pretty confident, but we've got some new ones both round the front and inside the plant. And the old ones, despite having their ends chewed off, still work. You know, haven't lost the root system completely. But what I will say is that root system is too small for that size plant. So it does need to do some growing now. Yeah, some serious growing. Right, this is a three-handed job, and our long-term evolutionary process has still not got me a third hand, so I'm going to have to make do with the two I've got. So I'm going to take quite a long piece of wire off because I'd rather do it in one go. And you know, if I waste a bit, so be it. It's pennies. Why struggle for pennies? One thing you do need to do if you've got a long dangly piece of wire is watch what you do. Because if you get one of those ends in your eye, you'll not only have two hands, but you might end up with one eye. Right, first thing I want to do is secure the wire. That's going to need to be right down the bottom of the mount because that's where I know the plant's going to be. So we'll put a loop round first and get it nice and tight, and that's my start point then. Now I don't normally do that. I normally just start winding basically and then secure the two ends at the end, but the fact is I've got to hold a pretty damn heavy plant with one hand, and that only leaves one, so I want this nice and tight, nice and secure. And because that's a sharp end, I'll take it off now, and then as I'm winding and mucking about, hopefully it won't dig in the back of my hand. Right, so that's my first loop, and all that is round the back of the mount, so I don't have to look at it. It will look prettier when it's finished. Only a tiny little bit of extra thought. It's bad enough having the flipping wire on the mounts, but you know, if I want the plant to stay there, I've got to do something. Okay. I want this quite low because looking at the way these new roots are growing, where they are, quite a lot of them luckily around the back of the plant, which is good because it means they'll get straight onto the bark. Those round the front temporarily will be airborne, so be it. I'm not worried about the fact that this has got no moss on it yet. When I've got some moss, I'll make a decision down the line what I could really do with that third hand. Let's see what we can do here. I need to pick it up because obviously the wire's got to go underneath the mount. There's one. I can get another one quite low down. That effectively is the base of the roots secured, but that's done nothing to secure the plant yet. And that's what the next one's going to do. And I'm going to take it round. Where can I pull? I can pull there. I'm going to go through there. I reckon that one will do it. Oh yes, you love it when a plan comes together. So without letting go, because the tension I've got I don't want to lose. That's the way to stop it when you've got wire. Just put a kink in it, round something. Now this bit round here can't move. This bit can, because I still need to secure that. And I don't need quite as much as that. Just need enough to bend round. And to secure that, all I'm going to do is go round the two loops I've already got and just give myself something to bite onto. Yeah. It is wire, it's not going to move. You know, fishing line I'd be doing knots. But as it's wire, I can just do a couple of twists and I'll do it. That is enough Take the end off, don't need that anymore. Oh, actually, I've just thought of a good thing to do with that end. Put my tag back on. Now I want that to sit somewhere where it won't flop around if I can. So if I put it up there perhaps. Yeah, that'll do. I only need it there because with a memory like mine I keep picking plants up sometimes and thinking, what the hell is that? You've seen me do it in videos and I have to quickly turn the plant round to where the tag hides. I don't like my tags on the front of the mount, so I like them round the back out the flipping way where I can't see them until such time as I might need to see them when I'm telling you all about them. Now, the test. Yep, that's the test. Will it support its own weight without pulling away from the mount? And yes, it does. So that is that one done. Yeah, it's quite a lot lower on the mount than it was before, which means that's the hook point. If I choose to, I can put it nearer the roof without it touching the roof, if I choose to. But with this one, the weight of the plant, yeah, it pulls it over. It's difficult to get the mount completely upright unless it's on something. So that the bottom of the mount is resting on some sort of grid or something. There are ways, there's always a way. Okay, so that's Dendrobium friedrichsianum, and hopefully the root system will now recover from its chewed ends and start growing a bit better. You know, every time it's putting out a new shoot here, it gets chomped, so it has to try again and try again and try again, and it's putting energy into the root area for no real benefit. So hopefully now any new roots on there can get away. So that's that one done. Short and sweet. I may choose, when the moss arrives, to actually just put a little bit of moss around the base of there. See, I could place some moss around there and just put a couple of loops of the fishing line round just to hold it in place. And then if I choose to take it off at a later date, it'll just lift off. So it's sort of planning ahead. But at the moment, looking at the way that root system works, I think if these back roots, you know, hadn't been chewed, I think they would be really, really well embedded in that mount by now. Oh well, give it time, we'll see what happens. See you next time. Thanks for visiting my channel. Hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, there are some others you could watch below. You can just click on the thumbnails. If you'd like to see more of my videos, please subscribe to my channel. You can use the link below. I post on most days, so hope to see you again soon. Thanks for stopping by.